Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. And welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2022. The first UFO Disclosure video I've made this year. Belated. I know, traditionally I do them on New Year's Day. Because I couldn't do that this year, so there. It's a little bit late, but better late than never. I've decided to call this first video of UFO Disclosure 2022 the Year of the Nudge, because I've noticed some patterns emerging which remind me a little bit of the more negative type behaviour we're getting out of the government. And indeed, this, I think there have been elements of this kind of activity, probably dating back to 2015 when I first started doing this series of UFO disclosure videos, although I did a couple before then, as some people have pointed out. I did one in 2009 saying, disclosure's going to be this year. And here we are 13 years later and it hasn't happened. But no, I think I'm going to be a little bit controversial in saying, this is why I call this video the Year of the Nudge, that willing UFO disclosure will not happen this year. I do think that's I think that's quite likely. Now, some of you won't like that, I know. Some of you will go, oh Ben, you're giving up, you're cucking. No, I'm not cucking, I'm not giving up. I'm just being realistic here. Well, they all say that. They're pessimists always say that, don't they? Well, I'm not pessimistic, because I'm not actually saying that the disclosure process has come to an end. I'm not going to take the Richard Dolan position. I'm more sort of Bryce Zabel supporter in that famous debate between the two guys, which I talked about on a previous video in this series. I just think that this year is going to be focused on laying the subconscious cultural groundwork for disclosure. That's what I think is going to happen. That's what I mean. This is what I mean by nudge. You see, when I say nudge, I'm thinking specifically of an organisation that's become quite infamous here in Britain, the Behavioural Insights Team, which is known as the Nudge Unit, and it's basically an organisation with a very behavioural insight. Sounds very Orwellian, doesn't it? And indeed it is. It's an organisation basically designed to provide ways and means of making people think and feel the way you want them to. So you can manipulate people psychologically, as individuals or as a group. That's what it's about. It's a psychological warfare outfit, a bit like the Tavistock Institute and Common Purpose and things like that. However, what's my thesis, what I hope is that there is a positive version of that going on at the moment in the opposition to the Illuminati occupation government we have on this world. That we actually have an anti IOG, as we could call it, consisting of President Trump and his supporters and all the other people, including everything to do with that unmentionable letter of the alphabet, which we can't talk about on YouTube. And that this particular unit hold this particular, basically the white hats, as some people call them, hold a certain amount of sway and influence within the world at the moment. They haven't been completely defeated in the election last year. That wasn't the end of it. So we'll see how it goes. But I have a feeling what we're going to see this year is just more and more of what I've been talking about. I'm going to talk about in this video. We're going to see more and more of what I say hints. You know, shoulders in the, elbows in the ribs, winks. That's what it seems to be. That's what we've had over the last few months since the UAPTF report. And I think we're going to get more and more of that. So this year, I think, is not going to be the most interesting year in this series of disclosure, UFO disclosure, agendas, whatever you want to call it. So I probably will make fewer of these UFO disclosure videos. However, the sort of the boring nature of this year to come is it's going to be like 2018 again. Things are just going to stagnate. You may get the feeling that things have just stagnated. That's the sense you might get. And indeed, I think some people within the exopolitical movement are going to give up. In fact, some of them already have, including some individuals I'm going to talk about today. But I do believe that I do believe that under the surface things will still be going on, and we shouldn't give up. We need to hang in tight. We need to hang in tight and we need to be patient, because this period of nudging can only go on so long, and after the nudging is over, then things have to bubble up to the surface and things have to be presented openly. So possibly, I mean, Bryce Zabel actually said something like this. He believes also that 2023 is going to be the crucial year. It's going. That's going to. He's put his money on 2023 being the year of disclosure. And having looked at what's going on at the moment, honestly, I think I can agree with him. I think I have to agree with him. But we'll see. I mean, I could be wrong. Indeed, I hope I am. I hope that the nudging period may be over now, and we're going to have 2023 early. I mean, that would be ideal, wouldn't it? But as I've always said, I believe that the process of UFO disclosure is intimately connected to other things going on in the world relating to the return of Trump and things like that, and things that Steve Bassett considers an anathema. Well, as much as I respect the guy, that's something we're going to continue to disagree on. Anyway, there has been some very interesting developments when it comes to Area 51. Now, ever since when Bob Lazar came forward with his amazing revelations in 1989, there's no real way to know for certain what was going on, because information about Area 51 was so scarce. Now, five years later, which was 1994 to 1995, something came along which changed the world. And I'm talking, of course, about the World Wide Web, the thing that you're watching this video on. That first emerged, I think, in late 1994. When that came along, satellite photos started appearing. Satellite photos of Area 51 managed to get online. Before then, you really had to go to specialist magazines to get hold of photos of Area 51. The only photos available of Area 51 were from basically old KGB photos from the Soviet Union, which had recently just collapsed. And as you know from previous videos, there was an absolute gold mine of leaks in the early 90s at the end of the Soviet era, because basically all the KGB files ended up on the black market. That's where the famous flying saucer thing and alien autopsy from Russia comes from. And among these was some satellite photos of Area 51, because of course the Soviets were very keen to monitor Area 51 as closely as possible. Indeed, they learnt some interesting things, like they learnt about the SR-71 spy plane much earlier than they should have, because they saw its shadow on the ground. It's just an infrared shadow where the mock-up had been. They had a mock-up where they were doing radar target tests on it, and when the satellite flew over, they put the model away. It was just like a quarter scale model, and thinking, oh, aren't we clever? We got it out of the way. The Russians can't see it, but the shadow, the infrared shadow, was still on the ground where the sun hadn't been shining. So the Soviets picked up an infrared trace of it. But anyway, I digress. As Ronnie Corbett would say, on with the joke. I should have a massive chair behind me, shouldn't I? Instead of Russell and a t-shirt and a porter's uniform. So, people said, well, people looked into Lazar's story. It's very easy now because we have satellite photos. He said he was taken to Papoose Lake. The geography of Area 51 is that there's the main Area 51 campus at Groom Lake, which you're familiar with the big runways. That's called Homey Airport. Papoose Lake is, I think, 15 miles, actually 15 miles? A certain amount of distance basically to the south of that. There's something called Papoose Lake. Another smaller dry lake bed, and Bob Lazar said that was where the secret facility was dealing with the UFOs. There were some hangars with which were hidden. The doors were made to look like the natural landscape, and other things. Now, what happened was people looked at these photographs and they looked at Papoose Lake and they saw nothing. Now, I'm sure what Lazar said is true about that the hangar doors were very well hidden. You wouldn't be able to see them because the doors had a textured cover, basically a disguise, to make them look like the natural Nevada landscape, which is bits of bush and brush and rocks and dust and things like that. However, you would expect some kind of infrastructure. You'd expect The things which lie in line with Sauder's laws. I mean, if you watch my Peasmore videos, you'll know about Sauder's laws. Richard Sauder, he's a deep underground military-based researcher, and he said how that there's certain things you've got to look for. You're looking for an underground base, you've got to look for certain things, such as a car park too large for the building that it serves. You've got to look for things that may look like air intakes or heat extraction sites. So you might see something that looks like a house but has a heat haze around it because it's an air vent. Something like that. Oh, hidden, entrances that seem to lead nowhere. Things like that. For example, like a building with a door and it goes down into the ground and there's nothing. So you see a big car park and there's just this door on a little pedestal and it just goes down into the ground. Now there's nothing like that at S4 at all, according to these satellite photos, which called very much into question Bob Lazar's story. But of course there has been a rebuttal to that, and it began with Jerry Freeman. Now Jerry Freeman was an incredible guy. He died sadly a few years after his amazing escapade, but he did something on the one hand absolutely reckless, but on the other hand incredibly brave and incredibly daring. He's what Count Dankula would call a mad lad. He broke into Area 51 successfully, and he got away with it. And the weird thing, he's not a ufologist. He doesn't give a damn about UFOs. He's not interested in them, which makes, I think, his story all the more credible. He's an archaeologist and historian, and he wanted to retrace the route of the people known as the 49ers. Now, the 49ers were called that because in 1849 they set off on an expedition to the gold fields of California. They lived in the eastern United States, east of the Mississippi, as Art Bell used to say. And they decided to head to California. And they had no way of getting there because so many people were going there to try and find the gold and make their fortune. So they basically put all their belongings onto oxen and ox carts drawn by oxen and a few horses, and they just went there as a big group. Now, in those days, there were most of the area around what we call today Nevada was unknown. It had not been mapped properly, so they were going into unknown territory, and they're making maps as they went along, exploring. So they were called pioneers, and they left inscriptions on the rocks as they went along. They really they had a terrible time of it because of the lack of water, because of the heat. When they arrived at Death Valley, they called it that because like about 8 of them died. It's not the record-breaking hot climate that gives it that name. It is the fact 8 of them died. It's a story of an incredible endeavour, and Jerry Freeman, the historian archaeologist, was very moved. So he tried to find the inscriptions that were left. Now, what happened was they headed down the Tickaboo Valley at one point, southwards down the Tickaboo Valley, which is where Area 51 now stands. And they camped for a couple of days at Papoose Lake. And Jerry went. He wanted to get there because he wanted to get a photograph of the inscription and maybe find some artifacts and things like that. And so he actually sneaked into Area 51. It's an unbelievable story. I don't have time to tell you all now, but he's a real mad lad, and he spent a week just crawling through the desert. I mean, he knows the desert landscape incredibly well. He knows how to survive. He knows how to hide, which I think is why he got away with what he did, because he knows that geography so well. He's so familiar with the territory. He dodged the security guards and things like that. He hid out in various old ghost towns and knew where all the springs were because the 49ers made a map of all the springs where you can get water. He eventually got to the southern shore of Papoose Lake and took the only photograph that's been taken of that location from ground level since before Area 51 was built. And you could look across, you could see very distinctly, it just looks like a normal lake. But then overnight, he camped overnight at Papoose Lake. And he was just not all night, because he went by. He hid during daylight and travelled out by moonlight. So he's waiting for the moon to rise so he could see what he was doing. He didn't have a torch or anything, because if he started lighting a torch, the security guards would find him. And now, funnily enough, alien scientist Jeremy Reese, who's a big Bob Lazar skeptic, is using this to claim that because Freeman managed to do his incredible journey, that's proof that Bob Lazar was lying, because if Bob Lazar was telling the truth, well, the security would be tighter, wouldn't it? Not necessarily. And also, if you're not expecting major incursions, and you wouldn't necessarily have security guards in every single location. Also, Jerry didn't get that close to the place where Bob Lazar. He got probably within about 5 miles of it. Also, Jerry, as I said, knows that kind of terrain very well. He can dodge the security guards. So I don't think it necessarily follows what alien scientists were saying. Anyway, if you read UFO Truth magazine, you'll know that I did an article in my column about this. But Jerry, when he was there, he saw lights and strange noises. He saw sort of like lights coming on and off, and he said it's like someone's opening hangars over the other side of the lake. He felt a rumbling sensation too, and lights in the middle of the lake bed as well, because it's a dry lake bed, just salt, you know. This is from a guy who has no interest at all in UFOs. His only interest is in history and archaeology. He actually he didn't see the inscription. He didn't find the inscription that was left, but he did manage to pick up a couple of souvenirs, like horseshoes and some other metal tools that have been left there by the 49ers. Right, God, that's very daring. But anyway, there's been some new. So that, to me, I think I disagree with Jeremy Rees. I think that's not evidence against Bob Lazar's story. That's evidence for it. Sure, I mean, Rees argues that, or Riss as he calls himself, it's RYS, not RHYS. He says, well, come off, look, he managed to walk right up to where Bob Lazar was, and no one tried to stop him, and things like that. So, it's obvious that there's nothing significant there at all. Well, but of course, as I've explained, that's not exactly the case. They didn't. I'm sure they would if they'd known he was there. They would have tried to stop him, but he managed to evade these people. He evaded them because he knew he knew the terrain, he knew the landscape, he knew how to hide. But since then, something else has come to light, which I think backs up that whole scenario. Victor Navarra, Andrew Burlington, you may be familiar with him. I think he has appeared in a couple of my videos. He's the alien interview researcher guy. He found something strange at Papoose Lake. There is a location that could be some kind of hidden entrance. Okay, I'm just going to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about here. This is Papoose Lake. Okay, that is Homey Airport there, the main Area 51 campus, and it's actually just south of here, across these Papoose Hills, this range of hills here, and you get to Papoose Lake. Now, if you want to find it, you'll notice on Papoose Lake there is this little spit of unsalted land here sticking out into the dry lake bed. The thing I'm talking about, which Andrew Burlington actually spotted, is here. You see this rather strange shape, this rather strange shaped depression here. It looks like a depression in the land. You can measure the distance of how big it is. And you see here it's about 130 feet, 150, there, 162 feet across there. So that tells you how big it is. Now you may think, well, what's so special about this? Well, it has what looks like this tree sitting here at the end of it. Now, it's like a tree just sitting there on its own, because there's no other tree like it for miles and miles around. In fact, you've got to go all the way over to here. I think it's over here. You find a few trees like it over here, miles and miles away. It's just a tree sitting completely on its own. To me, it looks like it's been planted there deliberately. Either that, or it's an artificial tree. Now, why would it be planted there? Possibly to hide an entrance. Maybe there's an entrance with a ramp going down underground. And the tree is there to prevent it being spotted by satellites, because it would have been regularly overflown by satellites from the Soviet Union and later the Russian Federation. So this may lead down to some underground base, and somewhere along here there are the hangars which Bob Lazar talked about. I think he said they were somewhere on the lake bed, on this lake shore here, and you can't see them because they're completely surrounded. Now, I always thought, like I said, that I said, you know, this breaks Sauder's laws. When people first saw this, they thought, well, it breaks Sauder's laws because there's nothing here. There's no infrastructure. Well, this is possibly infrastructure here that Andrew Burlington has found. And you might say, well, that's just a bit of a depression in the landscape. It doesn't mean anything. Well, look, there's a road leading to it. And you say, that's not a road. That's just like it's just like a little pathway. It's how wide is it? It's 18 feet wide. It's basically a single track road. Or it could be just a like when it rains, you know, it might be just like an outflow channel, because there's lots of rain channels you can see here, because it does rain occasionally in the area, and you get like these channels over time, they build up. But if you see here, this road goes down, if it is a road, goes down here, and you can just make out that it crosses the lake bed. You see there's these little lumps here that look like bumps. I mean, there could be boulders or something, and they run all the way along there. Do you see it? There's another one there. There's another one there. Another one there. Another one there. And you can actually see the road bed there. It's like they're milestones. They're marking. They're marking the route of the road between the entrance here along the lake bed here and to here. Now, when you get to here, the road basically you can see very clearly that the road. There's a junction here. There was one path that goes that way, but the road very clearly goes across here. Goes away from Papoose Lake. You can see the road very clearly now. This is from an area where there's nothing. There's a road leading to an area where apparently there's nothing. There's the entrance. Here's the road there. And so it's obviously like a very, very thin road. I mean, you can measure distance 6.45. It's a single tracked road. Goes along here. But where does it lead? It's a single track road. It's obviously not meant for a lot of traffic. Where does it lead? Where's it lead? Where's it going to take us? Well, eventually, it arrives. You keep going. It's heading north, and eventually it arrives here at this junction here, and it continues along here, and eventually it comes out on this road here, which is a big main road that leads north-south between Homey Airport, the main Area 51 campus, and Cheech Air Force Base, which is at Indian Springs, which I believe is down here somewhere. Indian Springs, Nevada. And it actually leads to here, Indian Springs, Nevada. So that's what Andrew found, and I think this is highly significant. I think this is a very, very significant find indeed, and it backs up Bob Lazar's stories. If we we had enough of that already with David Fruhoff and others. I don't think we should dismiss Bob Lazar. I think this is still active. And indeed, if this kind of structure does exist at Area 51, at the Papoose Lakes campus, then maybe there is something there. We can't tell, unfortunately, because without getting close enough to, because you don't know if that's a tree or what the tree's there for. It may just simply be a coincidence there's a tree there. You won't know. You have to actually get there to see it. And at the moment, we can't. Maybe one day we will. If you want to see more, if you want to see more of this, you want to see it for yourself on Google Earth, it's very easy to find. You go to, I'll give you the whole coordinates now. 37 degrees, 6 minutes, 37.7 seconds north. 115 degrees, 50 minutes, 23.7 seconds west. And since then, some other guy, a guy called UFO Proof. UFO Proof is another YouTube channel. And he's come forward with what he thinks is the entrance to S4. And it's like, he's found, it's actually a few miles away from Papoose Lake, but there is a road that goes there. There's a road that you can't, people on Area 51 can access. It goes straight from, it runs from, there's the Groom Lake Road, goes past Homey Airport and heads west, and there's a major junction, and one road goes south from that, and it heads only to one place. It heads to this location. It's actually much better than the Papoose Lake Road. It's in much better condition. It's 29 feet wide, which using the Google Earth measuring system, which means it's a double carriageway for two-way traffic. It seems much better constructed and paved, which indicates it's used a lot more. There's probably regular traffic going to and from that location. The location itself, well, I can show it to you. Okay, this is the channel UFO Proof, and there's a video on here And you see, there's lots of stuff about Area 51 here. It's very interesting. It looks like a good channel actually. It seems quite active. And this is the video here. I won't show you the whole I won't show you the whole thing, but basically it's called S4 base found on Google Earth. This is for real. Must see. That's a very brazen statement. This is for real. Well, I'm not so sure, but anyway, let's have a look at what we see here, because I can't actually see any significant proof that this is what it appears to be. But you could say that for the one Andrew Burlington found as well. This is what we have here. This is the location. There's these white square objects that could be low buildings. They don't appear to be casting any shadows. They're 100 feet square. There's this smaller building here with something attached, or could be a building. They could be foundation stones for a real building, some concrete laid out or something. Is there like a lattice structure there? I see. I don't know. Can't say for sure. But anyway, there's this circular drive, and this is the road. Now this road is actually 29 feet wide. I've already measured it. I'll just measure it again. It's about 29 feet, 29 feet wide. There we go. Which means that's a double. It's a double carriageway, not dual carriageway, a two-way carriageway. And you can see it's a much better designed road than the one leading to the Burlington site. And you see it splits off into two other roads here. And it goes up this way, carrying up here. And it'll eventually get to the junction. This is the junction I told you about. And there's the Groom Lake Road. And there's the building there. And then it carries on. The Groom Lake Road, of course, carries all the way along here to Homey Airport, and then, of course, up here and around the lake, and of course up towards up here to the Eastern Gate, where it leads up to the Groom Lake Road and Rachel, Nevada. So I can't really tell. I mean, it's much further away from. It's much further away from the base than where was it now? Than the Burlington discovery was. It's much further away. But funnily enough, the fact that it is actually labelled, for some reason it's labelled on Google Earth, not on this copy, this is Google Maps, but it is labelled on Google Earth as, it says S4 Research Facility here. It actually says that. I don't know how that came about. I'm not saying that the Area 51 management decided to blow the whistle. It could be there's a whistleblower on the inside. I think you can edit Google Earth, can't you? I know you can insert your own photographs, so maybe that's what happened. I don't know, but anyway, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting channel actually. This one, so do check it out. I've been unsubbed. I hate it. I keep being unsubbed from people. I've subscribed to them again. There you go. Anyway, this is it. This is the second candidate for a possible S4 entrance. On both occasions, I would say this means that the Bobbler's R story is far from closed, and we don't know what this is. I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible to say exactly what we're seeing here. I don't know if there's like a valley effect here, as if there's like a cutting here into the side of the cliff or something. I don't know. It looks like that, a little bit like that to me. It could be this is some kind of entrance. I don't know. But both are very interesting, and I think both keep the Bobbler's R case open in my view. If you want to see this for yourself, it is at 37 degrees, 9 minutes, 33.4 seconds north, 115 degrees, 55 minutes, 39.2 seconds west. Now, the first woman Director of National Intelligence has said something extraordinary. This is what I mean when I talk about nudging. Now, this is very interesting. Now, Avril Haines is a Biden appointee. And of course, she is a diversity hire. Let's face it. Biden has actually stacked his entire administration with these diversity hires, these kinds of characters. You know, the first this, the first that, the first one, yeah, no, as few white men as possible, and things like that. So that's Joe Biden for you, the legitimate president of the United States. Now, I don't want to sound too bitchy here, right? Just because Avril Haines is a diversity hire doesn't mean she's useless and incompetent. She is a highly experienced intelligence officer, and she's been around the block a few times at the CIA and places like that. So I'm sure she is reasonably effective at what she does. But she appeared at an event at the Washington National Cathedral with a few other people, including, amazingly, Avi Loeb, the alien hunting astronomer. Yeah, the guy talked about him previously. And she also supervised the UAPTF report in June, back in June, which is why when she was actually asked about this in her interview, and she said, she said something extraordinary. The bottom line is, we don't understand everything we're seeing. There's always the question of, is there something else we don't understand that might come extraterrestrially? She stumbles a little bit over the word extraterrestrially because it's actually not a real word, although no doubt it'll be coined as a neologism now. It'll probably end up in the Oxford English Dictionary. That's extraordinary for several reasons. It's extraordinary. Firstly, it went over the interviewer's head. He just sort of like didn't bat an eyelid. He was like David Frost with Benazir Bhutto, you know. He didn't, when she sort of said that thing about Bin Laden. He just carried on. Didn't even break his stride. Probably because he thought he might get shot as well. What's significant about this? Because of course John Ratcliffe, the previous DNI, made similar statements back in March last year. The difference is in this case because at that time Ratcliffe was the ex-DNI. He was the former one. What's significant about Avril Haines doing this is because she's the incumbent. She's actually in office, she's in service right now. Which I think leads to the possibility of asking, is what she said authorised by her administration? It's possible that it is. If so, then that's very interesting because it indicates that Beijing Joe is obviously not, he obviously has some rivals within the administration. And so does Creepy Kamala. Those two obviously are not in total control of the national security state, because there's no way those two would ever authorise Avril Haines to say something like that. Or it could be that Haines decided to do this off her own initiative, in which case I applaud her courage. Hope she doesn't get into trouble with her boss, mind you. If she does, she can always run away. Joe Biden, he wouldn't be hard to run away from, would he? And what's interesting, right, this came just 2 weeks after Bill Nelson. Do you remember the previous video, Bill Nelson of NASA? He said all that stuff about UFOs as well. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that this is all part of the nudging. And what's more, I predicted it. Do you remember? Do you remember my interview with Steve Bassett? I predicted that this would happen. I said that based on the other things that had been happening within... Did you see the thing I put up? There was like a calendar with red arrows whenever something significant happened between December 2017 and now. And I noticed there was like a pattern. Something would happen, then there'd be a gap, then something would happen, then there'd be a gap. I predicted something would happen in the autumn of 2021. That's when another red arrow would be put onto the calendar. And guess what? It did. Amazing. That's it. Very remarkable. Now, I don't know how many of you saw the Langrenus 2021-14 YouTube channel. This is weird. This YouTube channel appeared called, there was the two Chinese sigils and then Langrenus 2021-14. Now, it was a weird channel, completely blank channel. No banner, no avatar, no uploads, no faves, no subs, nothing. It was just like, it had just been created, like a brand new blank channel, nothing on it. And but it immediately uploaded, it immediately started live streaming. And it did a live stream, because you can do this on YouTube now, luckily. It did a live stream that lasted a whole week. And what it showed on this live stream was what looked like a lunar landscape. It was quite monotonous. I mean, the camera hardly moves. It just like, it shifts to different views occasionally. But it doesn't really do much. Sometimes there's darker scenes, sometimes there's lighter scenes. But what you see is just what looks like the moon. The moon. It's very weird. It's low resolution rather than like the early Apollo stuff. Far lower resolution than the cameras coming from you see on the moon today. But what's interesting is that who's filmed this? Now, firstly, the Langrenus refers to a crater. It's a crater on the moon, and the actual Chinese sigils at the beginning are pronounced, it's Shining. Now I know if I say Shining, that's a Chinese word, and I know I'm probably mispronouncing it, because I know that when it comes to Chinese, the tone of what you say is very, whether you say Shining or Shining, it means something completely different. So I've apologised for mispronouncing the word, but it actually, if you say it in the right tone, it actually means mission, and the sigils actually mean mission. Now that's very strange, because there are no missions in Langrenus crater. Nothing has ever landed there. It's never been visited. I know the Chinese are on the moon right now. We know, well, we've been told there's robots on the moon from China, the Jade Rabbit thing. Yet that's in a completely different place. So what's going on? Now, most people didn't watch it for very long because it just seems a bit boring. There's not much going on. The camera just sits there looking at the lunar landscape. It's just, like I say, look like an early Apollo low-resolution shot. And you do hear a few voices and music and things like that in the background very indistinctly. It only really gets interesting at the very end. At the very end of this video, you see the camera move very suddenly. After a whole week of just showing a few static images like that, as if it's just been placed on a tripod somewhere on the lunar surface, looks like it's been picked up, and then you see an object goes in front of the camera that looks like a human hand, with a glove on, obviously, because it's a spacesuit, like that. Now that's weird, isn't it? And then it stops. Luckily a lot of this has been recorded, including the end bit. There is one little clip left on the Langrenus channel, and that's all there is. The actual live stream was deleted. So, what is it? I mean, is it fake? Is it a prank? Is it someone taking a mickey? Maybe inspired by the rolling live streams that NASA does from the ISS or from Mars? I don't know. Or it's weird though, because if it is a fake, it's a very good one. I mean, obviously the images are very low resolution, but you see in one scene you actually see the Earth. Now, on the moon, as you know, the moon is in a fixed position relative to the Earth, so the Earth is always in the same place above the horizon, and it is roughly 10 degrees above the horizon in the shot, which is where you'd expect it to be. If you go to Google Moon, you can see this for yourself. Indeed, several researchers have done this. It's in exactly the place you'd expect to see it if you were actually filming from Langrenus crater. What's more, it's in the correct phase. The phases. Now, we know if you look up at the moon, it has phases. Half, quarter, full, etc. If you're on the moon, the Earth also has phases. If you look at the Earth, you see the phases of the Earth, and they're the exact opposite of the ones on the moon, at whatever time this happens to be. The phase of the Earth is also correct in this shot. So if that was faked, it was very well done. So, could it be real? I mean, could this really be a film from the moon? If so, it's an unauthorised one. It's obviously a leak. It could be whistleblowers. It could be just someone doing it for the hell of it, who is part of the secret space program. But it could be there is actually an expedition at Langrenus crater right now. If it is, it's obviously they got there by anti-gravity probably. But perhaps somebody on the inside, maybe at the Secret Mission Control Center, said, I want to tell people about this. What would you do if you were in that position? If you had something secret like that? It's ironically, despite all the sensation and the fakery and the nonsense, a real person who in that real situation would probably do exactly that. They would put it on YouTube. They would stream it to YouTube. And this is ironic because, if any real information does come out, and I believe some of the things on YouTube are real, that is exactly what they would do. They would put it on YouTube. Same with the aliens and the UFOs and other things. All the other secret stuff. It would go onto YouTube. It's sad actually. There'd be this terrible signal to noise ratio problem because there's so much out there that is fake that sadly it may well be ignored, and indeed it has been ignored. I think real alien and UFO videos on YouTube have been ignored, or they've been falsely debunked, and it's got a lot to do with the fact that if you put a real alien or UFO video or secret space program video onto YouTube, you're very much like the little boy who cried wolf, aren't you? So, well, whoever leaked it, thank you very much, if it is real. And I think it's attached to another story I'm going to come to. But, of course, Rich Planet TV did another video. They made another film about this, Who Controls the World? Very interesting title. And the answer comes from an interview with Catherine Austin Fitz, who's a very interesting lady, a very brave lady. And the answer seems to be whoever controls the world at the moment is whoever controls space. And Richard D. Hall presents the programme, and of course, naturally he brings on Andrew Johnson. Who else? Who else does he tolerate these days? And they go through the whole. They go through they talk about the TTSA and ATIP material. However, they get a lot wrong in this particular programme, and indeed you may have read my review on Hapanwo Voice about this. You can actually see the video on the Rich Planet TV site. And I was very, very disappointed to see that they, when it comes to things like the Tic Tac and the Go Fast and the gimbal footage, they fall back on this guy called Anton Petrov, who's a science vlogger. And they said, this is all very interesting because this guy's proved that these things aren't real UFOs. They're not real UFOs, it's just normal stuff. And you know what? The thing is, Anton Petrov simply goes through exactly the same stuff that Mick West and Thunderfoot went on about. And I thought, oh God, Richard and Andrew, what are you doing? This sort of stuff, this stuff from Mick West, and has been comprehensively discredited. And Richard and Andrew just repeat it on their programme. And what's sad is I know why they're doing it. They are repeating on the reason they're in this situation where they repeat this palpable falsehood is simply because they're refusing to speak to other people within this community. That's what's causing this. And if only they'd done so, if only they were willing to speak to us and interact with us and consult us, they would spare themselves what they're obviously feeling right now, which is a hell of a lot of embarrassment. But they won't, because the thing is this, I don't know, they have such a low opinion of the rest of us, those two, that they've shut themselves off from us, so they're kind of operating in the dark, and they think they're the ones who are always in the right, and they're making ridiculous mistakes. Just like Richard D. Hall. Richard did this with Larry Warren, you know, in the Mendlesham thing. And you can't pull people out. You can't pull them out of it. I mean, obviously, you know, I've fallen out with Andrew for a personal reason, but Richard, no doubt, will back him up on that. You can't pull people out. I mean, there's actually a Swedish saying which is very apt in this case, and it goes, "It is impossible to wake up a man who is pretending to be asleep." And they say other things. You know, they say things like, "Oh, Tucker Carlson is just full of crap, and his thing is full of crap," which is that is incredibly that is just so unfair and ignorant, and shows a complete lack of understanding of what's going on in this situation. What Tucker Carlson features in his programs about UFOs, whoever's behind it, is incredibly courageous, and it's incredibly informative, and it is groundbreaking. And Richard and Andrew just dismiss it. Oh, it's just disinformation rubbish, you know. So to get to the bottom, so obviously Richard, it's inevitable, and indeed it's inevitable this was going to happen. Guess what? Richard D. Hall thinks Lou Elizondo is a shill. Can you believe it? Yes, he actually thinks Lou Elizondo is a shill. And so Richard decided to investigate this. He decided to investigate Elizondo and find out more about his shilliness, because he has that kind of, he looks a bit shilly, doesn't he? So let's just see if he really is as shilly as he looks. So what did Richard do? Did he talk to UFO Jesus and to Richard Dolan and to me and to Gary Heseltine? No! Statement analysis! The magic wand is waved again. And of course, you know what I think about statement analysis. I've talked about it before. It's something you can't. It's a useful tool, but on no account should it be used as the only source of information. On no account should it be used as a substitute for other methodologies. Yet Richard D. Hall does this. Even though he did actually do two statement analysis, separate independent ones on Elizondo, but even that doesn't, I think, clear up the fact that he's just shut himself off in a little. He's just slammed the door on everyone and saying, "Look, I'll work this out myself from statement analysis, and I don't need any other methodology. I don't need any more information, and that's it." And Andrew Johnson says something which I think is very revealing about the mistakes that these guys are making. He says this: anybody that gets promoted like that is promoted for a reason. He's promoted for a reason, and it's not for a good reason. So I don't know if I did his voice properly. I should pinch my nose maybe like that. Anybody who gets promoted. Now what Andrew's essentially saying there, he's revealing his own belief in a fallacy that I've identified many times, which is no conspiracy can ever be seen to end, because everything that makes it look like it's ending is simply a deeper part of the conspiracy. You see what I mean? So basically, Andrew Johnson, if he was like 200 years into the future in a post-Illuminati world, he and Richard would still be peeping round corners going, "My goodness, aren't they crafty? They've actually made us believe the New World Order's over. But we know they're still in control. The bad guys are still in power. Yes, they are. They'll never leave. They're invincible. They're unbeatable." No, that's not the case at all. And I've explained in many other videos, in many other situations, many articles, why there is a difference between, fake progress and real progress. He says something like, they also talk about the 5 observables of UAP, and they point out correctly that all the 5 observables of UAP can also be applied to the secret space program technology. But then they go off on a kind of Mark McCandlish tangent. They go down the Michael Schratt, Mark McCandlish route, which is, and I don't know if they specifically believe this, but they certainly hint that, well, that is the UFO phenomenon. That's it. That's all it is. And that's not true. I mean, I actually had Darcy Weir on her Panwo Radio last week, and we discussed this. There's many reasons to suggest that the secret space program cannot account for all of the UFO phenomenon. For two main reasons. Firstly, the behaviour of the phenomenon, abduction, stuff like that. Secondly, its antiquity. It goes back a long way, a long way indeed. The kind of experiences you see in the Tic Tac footage from ATIP TCSA have been reported by pilots since the invention of the aeroplane. Since the invention of aircraft themselves. I mean, for example, the Swedish Air Corps in 1930 carried out the first aerial interception of what they called ghost rockets above Scandinavia, and Claes Svan has done lots of articles about this. And what they describe is really pretty much what we see in the TTSA ATIP footage. Now, presumably we didn't invent anti-gravity TR-3Bs before pistoned engine airplanes. So that's why I don't think that's the case at all. Now, they talk about the threat narrative. Now, a lot of people have said this about the threat narrative. Now, a lot of people think they're obviously using this. They're planning a fake alien invasion, and the threat narrative to do with UAPs is all a part of that. And to be honest, I can't rule that out. That's something we have to be on our guard against. However, as Dolan has pointed out, there may be a more innocent explanation for that, and that is simply because of the parlance of military strategy. Because this is the way military strategists think. A lot of the people who say, well, they say they're a threat, that's bad. A lot of those people don't actually understand what is involved with military strategy. The word threat doesn't necessarily mean something you shoot at. Die, motherfucker! It doesn't mean that necessarily. It may mean that in the movies, it doesn't mean that in real life. What it actually means is just, the word threat could simply be used, applied to something that might be dangerous but you don't know. And that could be simply the fact that the Department of Defense is doing this, and there's the UAPTF report on the military are now training to deal with these things. It may not be they're going down the Independence Day route. And of course, some people then accuse me of giving false reassurances, because they'll say, yes, but they might be, Ben, they might be. And you see, the might be thing is what's known as the paradigm of prevention. You always assume the worst case scenario and act on that as if it were real, because that way you can't really go wrong. Because if you are wrong, it doesn't really matter. At least you've acted on what you thought was the worst case scenario. It's called the paradigm of prevention. However, in this case, they would say something like, well, let's just assume they're planning for a fake alien invasion to bring in the New World Order. As you know from my debates with Steve Mumbling and the video I made about this, I do take that possibility seriously. However, you could say, well, Ben, what have we got to lose by just assuming that? Well, a lot. We've got a hell of a lot to lose. A hell of a lot. Because if we assume this is like the prelude to the fake alien invasion, and it's not, then we'd be losing a priceless opportunity. That is the possibility that what we're looking at actually is a prelude to willing disclosure. Now, 10 years ago, I would have said that was impossible. But times have changed. I've changed. I've changed my position on this. I believe that willing disclosure is possible. And it's not just because Steve Bassett has talked me around. It's because of the way the world has changed, especially in 2016. So basically, yeah, it's, and once again, it's disappointing to see Richard D. Hall produce something really so shallow and so misguided and misleading. Richard is capable of better than this, and he has done better. I hope he goes back to doing better stuff. But it's worth watching. Go to Rich Planet TV and give it a watch. You know. I've got a Rich Planet TV mouse mat now, by the way. I needed a new one. I thought, what the hell, I'll get a Rich Planet TV one. Okay, so now we're going to carry on. Now, the Langrenus crater story. There's something else connected to this I want to bring up about. Now, so my ears are itching. And that's to do with not long after this Langrenus video, this 1 week video appeared on YouTube, an article was published by the Air Force Office, I forgot what it was, the Air Force Office of Research or something like that. I can't remember what it was. I should have made a note, sorry, but it's called, you can look it up, it's called, you can find out, it's called A Primer on Cislunar Space, CIS, C-I-S. Now, the word cis has been adopted by the cultural Marxists today, because they always talk about cisgendered people, or privileged cisgendered people and things like that. But it's cislunar space actually simply means it's got nothing to do with that. It means the area of space between the Earth's orbit, that is where satellites and spacecraft normally orbit, in low Earth orbit or high Earth orbit for high-flying satellites, and the Moon, which is 238,000 miles away, roughly. Was it 278,000 miles away? So it's a lot of space. It's a large amount of space. So basically, that refers to cislunar space. And it basically, this article is simply just, it's not a very long or complicated article. It just gives out the basics of astronavigation and Kepler's laws and gravity and rocketry and Newton's second law and things like that. Newton's third law as well and things like that. It's but it's intended. It says in the article it's intended for space military professionals. In other words, guardians, the Space Force. So they are planning. It seems that they are. There is, at least in theory now, the United States Space Force and maybe others as well are planning some kind of operations between the Earth and the Moon. This could possibly involve landing on the Moon in a military way. Now, this is it's weird. It's like it seems that there's a grab for space, and indeed Catherine Austin Fitts seemed to indicate this, that there is now a grab for space, and it's very similar actually to the 18th, 17th and 18th century, when the colonial period began, when Europeans began to travel the world and take over other countries around the world, other nations around the world, to create colonialization. Now, there was a massive competition between the various colonial powers. Britain was the top one. We had the British Empire, but there was also France, the Netherlands, Spain, Portugal. All these countries had their own desires to take over various parts of the world. And there were big competitions on which of these countries could get hold of what territories, and they fought wars over it. And you kind of know where these colonies were, because what's the main language of the spoken there, and you'll know that's where basically the territories were. So the sort of, for example, South America is mostly Spanish speaking, because that was the Spanish colonies. Portuguese, Brazil had Portuguese because that was Portuguese. There's Dutch in the East Indies, French in various parts of Africa, things like that. But this is very similar. It seems there is a grab now for who can control space, and indeed there is a sort of prelude to some kind of conflict building. I mean, we have the Space Force in the United States, but the Chinese are actually far ahead. They have military satellites up there already. It's possible the US have as well. They certainly have that military space shuttle thing, the XR-3B or XRT-TRT or whatever it's called. And there is going to be some kind of grab for the moon at some point, I think. I mean, this goes back a long way. I mean, there was that ridiculous, insane plan to launch a nuclear bomb and blow it up on the moon. Do you remember? Oh, God. There's actually a book out called Nuke the Moon. They were planning to detonate a massive 20 megaton bomb on the moon. And they were going to make a big spectacular thing about it. Like, they would have it right on the terminator between the dark and light side. And so it would be visible from the Earth so people could see it. And it would probably create a new crater, and God knows what they called the crater. I don't know, the atomic crater, or name it after the president or something. Or the Russian premier, because the Russians had their own plan to do that as well. It's absolutely nuts. Not least because, I mean, maybe the solution is some kind of treaty like the Antarctic Treaty. But, I mean, somebody quipped at one point, well, there's a difference between the colonial era on Earth from centuries ago and this neo-colonial grab for space, in that, at least in space, there are no troublesome natives. Well, what if there are? What if there are troublesome natives up in space? And unlike the colonial era on Earth, these are natives who will have a technological advantage on us. Remember, it could be they're acting already. Remember Bob Jacobs and the rocket, the rocket test with the camera, and he was filming it, and the flying saucer flies round it and shoots beams of light to it, and it light of the warhead. This warhead is flying through the upper atmosphere. This flying saucer appears, it circles it, shoots beams of light at it, and it just blows up. That was actually mentioned in like the mainstream press a little while ago. So, I mean, a treaty is not a bad idea. Carol Rosin's, space weapons ban treaty is a good idea. Well, but it's quite, I think it's a bit utopian. I think something more drastic might be needed. Like I said, a massive move against the deep state would be necessary to prevent this from happening, I think. We don't want to get into conflict with aliens. We don't want to start a fight. I mean, you know what I think about the fake alien invasion, but if there are real aliens up there, we don't want to mess with them. It's not just for moral reasons, it's purely practical. It would be incredibly destructive, and probably more destructive for us than for them. Because in the occasions when humans and aliens have got into conflicts, usually the humans come worse off in almost all scenarios. And I mean, it could be that this scenario, this is where it ties in with the Langrenus 2014 to 2021-14 thing. By the way, I don't know what that means. I mean, the 2021 is obviously the current year at the time, which was last year. The 14 could mean anything, and the Chinese sigils mean mission. But mission Langrenus 2021-14. Anyway, the reason I think these two stories are obviously tied together, because if there is some kind of military outpost currently on the moon, then the situation is even more urgent than you might think, because the steps to land forces on the moon have already begun, in secret. So we'll see where that goes. Oh, one more thing. This Island Earth. Have you seen This Island Earth? It's a film from 1955, from the golden age of Hollywood, and it's amazing. It's an amazing movie. It's a really amazing movie. It's on YouTube at the moment. I don't know how long it's going to be there, so watch it while you can. But it's about some scientists. They're working in a laboratory, and they get sent some anonymous gifts of high technology. And I do wonder if this is sort of related to the Roswell thing, including like electronic components which are far superior to anything they can build. And then they get, that's the most interesting bit, I think, the first act of the film, if you get a chance to watch it, because it may have been influenced by real life, you know, analysis of the debris from the Roswell incident, which happened like a few years earlier, less than a decade beforehand. So I do wonder if that's the case, but it's a great movie anyway, because what happens is these scientists get summoned to a secret laboratory in a lovely place in the countryside, but it's run by these weird looking people who are obviously aliens, and eventually they go up in a flying saucer and they visit the planet where these aliens come from, and it's a very, very good film. Very good film indeed. Very well made, well written, produced. Great special effects for the 1950s, it really is. Way ahead of its time in terms of special effects. So yeah, do watch that if you can. So my prediction, and you know, normally I'm considered a little bit maybe over. You know, as characters go within this community, I generally have a reputation for being overly optimistic. In this case, I'm going to be very cautious. In this first opening video of UFO Disclosure 2022, I have quite a cautious feeling at the moment. The second UAPTF report will be, I think it's due very soon. I thought it was due at Christmas. Don't know if it's when it's coming out. I think they said every 6 months, didn't they? But I've got a feeling this is going to be. It's not going to go away. But I don't believe anything spectacular will happen in 2022. I think we're going to have to wait for 2023 at least. I think they have fallen back on just preparing the psychological and cultural groundwork. It's like the nudge units. It's like this behavioural adaptation institute of human understanding and relations, or whatever they bloody call themselves. They always have these horrible Orwellian names. It's like that, but it's a good version of that. I don't have any proof that such a strategy exists, but I can see it in the behaviour of certain people, such as Avril Haines, such as Bill Nelson, such as John Ratcliffe, such as I don't know about Jaime Shed. I think that's something different. But it's all preparing the way, and also keep an eye on what's coming out in the cinema and on TV. I'm not talking about the specialised UFO documentaries. I'm talking about normal programs which might have themes within them that seem to be encouraging certain thoughts and feelings among the population. If you see any, let me know, tell me about them, and I'll watch them. Also, I myself will keep a good lookout for things like that, even though I hate television so much I hardly ever watch it, but I'll keep a lookout and I'll rely on you guys to tell me, because I know, you know, Ben, I watched this so you don't have to. That sort of thing. Yeah, let me know if you hear about anything that you think may be related to that thing. So yes, there will be another UFO. This is not going to be the only UFO Disclosure 2022. There will be others, but they may be fewer and farther between, and obviously it all depends on events. I may be wrong. I hope I am. Yes, I could be eating my words with salt and pepper. Thank you very much for watching Herpanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop that pesky New World Order.